case you're wondering, it's Drew. He's late. Per usual. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm David Baxter. Tim and the family asked me to speak here at today's events, and I don't want to use the word funeral because really what this is a celebration of life for Tim. And we talked a lot about this, and that was one of the things that, is as much as all of us may miss Tim, that today is really, he really wanted, I think, exactly what we have here. His friends, his family, people talking and engaging and getting to know each other. And this is exactly what he wanted. What he didn't want was a somber event where we're sad and we miss him, which we do. But that's not really what he wanted here today. What he wanted is exactly what we have. The family, the friends, smiling faces, and this might be a little bit different than maybe some of the traditional, but that was his intent. And that's really what he wanted. We spoke a lot about it, and this would make him very, very happy. So, I can't be more happy to see everybody engaging the way that they have, and I think it's just wonderful. It's exactly what he would have wanted. So, a little bit of, with Tim and Sophie and the family, I'll do a little bit at the beginning here, kind of a little bit more formal for some of you that might know, might not know. And the rest, it's kind of funny. When I had written everything down, and Troy and we were talking this morning, and it was much more formal, and I wrote down exactly what I was going to say, and I looked at it this morning, and I went, nah, that wouldn't be Tim, right? That's not what he wanted, And, events like this, I can tell you right now, if he was here right now, he'd throw me out of here. Because he'd be like, oh, there's a microphone. Let me toward that, right? Microphone? That's me. I want in front of the mic. And that was Tim. So and maybe that's why he picked me. But, I can't overemphasize that, I've been very, very fortunate to have the relationship I have with Tim and the family. I met Tim. It's funny. I had to go back and look. And I met Tim back in, I think, 2006. And my background with Tim was we worked together. So a funny story of how Tim and I got to meet each other was Tim worked for Ford, obviously, and he was supplier technical assistance. And a lot of you guys may not know what that is that don't work in the automotive field. But Tim's job was basically to go into automotive suppliers, and I worked for automotive supplier, and his job was to help them. It was to help them through problems, and it was to make sure processes were followed, etc. And those of you that know Tim, it was a perfect job for him because Tim loved to help people. So Tim decided to take on a Saturday to cover a meeting for somebody, and so Tim comes into where I used to work, and we'd had a meeting. We were out on the manufacturing floor. We were having a problem. We had one of the managers in from Ford. I was the manager for the supplier, and I knew the manager from Ford. He and I, we'd known each other for 20 years. So we're going through what the problem is, and Tim's there, and we're having this discussion, and all of a sudden, the manager, and I'd never met Tim before this day. First time I ever met him, right? So big, tall guy comes walking, and I'm like, okay, who's that guy? So we're on the plant floor, and so all of a sudden, things get a little heated. Things get a lot more heated. We're having a very spirited discussion where this person I've known for a long time, we're pretty much yelling at each other, right? And then all of a sudden, it's getting real warm, and Tim has to step in, and he's like, whoa, all right, you two. And all of a sudden, Tim's the referee. So that was the very first time I met Tim. And Tim had to be looking at me, and he's going, oh, God, what have I got myself into? It's Saturday. I stepped into something for somebody, and now I'm refereeing a fight, right? So Shortly after that, about a week later, we had to go to Chicago. And so I called Tim. I'm like, hey, you want to ride with me? He's like, yeah, okay, I guess I can do that. And I'm thinking now, I look back in my mind, I'm like, Tim's probably going, oh, good God, what am I doing? I'm driving with this crazy guy who's wanting to get in a fight with this other guy, right? So it wasn't quite that bad. But that became the journey for Tim and I. And from that point in time, we traveled a lot, we worked together, and we spent a lot of time together. And that friendship developed over the years. I watched Troy and Drew grow up, and was engaged in his family. And we had a lot of fun. We did a lot of work stuff together. We went through a lot of really, really tough things. But we had a lot of fun. And I look at that and, that was kind of the person that Tim was, right? And throughout all those years, and even though Tim and I had that tight friendship and that tight relationship, Tim in all those years never crossed that line between friendship and professional, right? I worked for one company, went to my competition, and that whole time that was the integrity that Tim had. There was always integrity. Everything was by the book. And regardless of our friendship or how things were, Tim never crossed that. And that speaks volumes for who he was, right? And, we had a lot of fun, did a lot of things. But when you look at people and the quality of character of who they are, you could not ask for a better person. You just couldn't. And, through the years, that just kind of really continued. But also, too, Tim's life from the work standpoint, that's why Tim was so successful. In the back of the room here today, there were a number of work people from Ford, from Inalfa, which was one of the companies that Tim took care of, Wabasto, and that just goes to show really who Tim was, right? From that standpoint, not discluding any of the family and friends, but the impact. These are people that nobody would have really known whether they were here or not, right? But they thought enough of Tim and had enough respect for him and the family that they were here. And, when we think about life, you look back and you go, did I make a difference? Absolutely. He did. He made a huge difference in not just people's lives, but in what he did for a living and what he did for Ford Motor Company, what he did for these things. I mean, these other companies, Tim always had an impact. And it's funny, one of the things that I shared with Sophie as we were talking about these things they became Timisms. And it was funny. Timisms were Tim's teaching moments. So, and it was really funny. Timisms were pretty much known across the board in his work life, not only just at one of the companies, they were carried over into the other. So it was like Tim was consistent. And then Tim became aware that there were Timisms, or what we called Timisms. And he kind of went along with it for many years after he found out that that's what we called them. But they were Tim's teaching moments. And I'm sure Drew and Troy probably went through many of Tim's teaching moments. And we would be in a situation and Tim would sit down and he would be like, all right, everybody, time for one of those teaching minute moments. And then over the course of time, you just kind of went, okay, it's time to sit down. All right, Tim, go ahead, right? And Tim would love to, he would love to sit and he would explain, and Tim was extremely knowledgeable. And he would walk people through and he would explain, all right, here's this and here's how you do things. It was Tim's time to teach people what Tim knew. And that's what made him happy. And he did a great job at it. And so many people and companies benefited from Timisms. And, we would always, and Tim didn't care who you were. He didn't care what your title was. or anything else like that. One of the gentlemen back here, he's one of the vice presidents from Wabasto. And many times I'd see Tim come in, close his door, sit down and go, okay, Keith, got to have a talk, right? And that was just Tim. You pretty much everybody, you checked your title at the door with Tim. But through Tim's career and through that, those relationships, when you look at those people that have been here today from the work standpoint, those are deep relationships that not a lot of people can build. And Tim was able to do that, which, he really, really did something that, a lot of people can't do. And I was blessed for all the years to be able to see and work with Tim. But that was kind of the work side of Tim. But through the whole work side, it was always a conversation when you talk to Tim. Work was important, but his family was the most important thing. And Tim would talk about, when the kids were younger, and he would talk about, the things that were going on, and at the old house, the pool, and how we enjoyed those things, and coaching the sports. That was one of the things that Tim and I, we spent a lot of time talking, and, that was one of the greatest things, I think, or one of the greatest enjoyments in Tim's life, was those times that he was able to coach the sports and the things that he did, and be able to spend the time with the family, and through the stories of the go-kart and things getting wrecked and broke, and, But those things were, from Tim's standpoint, those were the things that were really the most important to him. As successful as Tim was, and as well-respected as he was, he loved his family. And when we all look at the life today, the crazy life that we're all living, I think that's something really, to take a look back. We all struggled, and Tim and I talked a lot about this, the balance, right? But having that balance between what you do for life, and what you do for work, and then your actual life. And that's one of the things that I would say, Tim always, if he had his choice, he would always want more time at home. And that's where he really, at the end of the day, that's where he really enjoyed it. And at the end, that's where he wanted to be. So, also to, as we went through our relationship, one of the things, obviously Tim loved cars. And Tim, finally, we're talking, and he decides to buy this 1969 Chevelle, as you see the pictures. So Tim gets the car, beautiful car. Well, for those of you that don't know, Tim's got a little bit of hillbilly in him, about that much. So Tim gets the car, and then Tim's like, yep, I'm going to jack it up, basically make it look like a four-wheel drive. I'm going to put side pipes on it. I'm going to do all this stuff. And I'm like, Tim, it's not 1970. You're not doing that. Oh, no, I'm doing that. No, Tim, you're not doing that. Oh, yeah, I am. No, you're not. So myself and one of the gentlemen that were here, Randy Boyer, were like, Tim, if you do that, we're going to steal your car. It's that simple. We're stealing it from you, and you're never going to see it again. But with that, somehow Tim entrusted me this summer with his car. I think maybe he was, of course, his direction was, yeah, let's jack it up, put side pipes on it, which he knew wasn't going to happen. But, I really felt honored because that was one of Tim's prized possessions. And Tim came to me this summer and said, hey, I want you to do some things to the car. And we did. I took the car, of course, and typical Tim story, right? Another one. He goes, hey, as he leaves, he goes, let's do this, do a couple things. Okay. He says, by the way, take a look at that shifter, that manual transmission. He goes, it's a little hard to get out of third gear. All right, Tim, I'll take a look at it. He leaves. Him and Sophie leave. I go to drive the car around the block. I can't get the thing out of third gear. I call him. I'm like, Tim, what do you mean it's a little hard to shift? It's stuck in third gear. I can't get the thing out. Yeah, you just got to kind of wiggle it a little bit. I'm like, Tim, what are you doing? What's wrong with you, right? But that was Tim, right? It's really not that bad. Needless to say, transmission had to be rebuilt, but God love him. And if he was here, I'm sure he's looking down right now going, you're an idiot for telling that story. But no, these were all just some of the things that made us really, love Tim and have the respect for him. And, it's one of the things, that when I talk about family, I look back, and one of the times that, I really saw concern in Tim's face for his family was Drew had a bad car accident. And he called me and said, hey, here's what's happened. And, I heard it in his voice on the phone. And I went, ooh, this is bad. I told my wife, I'm like, ooh, this is serious. I've never heard Tim like this. And I went and saw Drew, and ultimately, obviously, he was fine. But what I heard in his voice that day, and then the following conversations, it was when I talk about Tim and his family, his concern for his family that day, was clear, right? Nothing else mattered. Nothing. I'm there, I have an issue, and that was all he was focused. And that really, for me, I saw his work phone ring multiple times. Didn't matter. He was like, no, not dealing with that. My family is what's important, and that's where he was focused. And once again, it just really speaks to who he was and what was important. And it just, it rattled him. And that's really the only time that I ever saw Tim rattled. Through his illness, we talked. He was never rattled. Tim was, I guess I'll say, an engineer. Give me the data, I'll deal with it. And he did through the whole time. He was never bothered. He knew what the situation was. And when it came to himself, none of that ever rattled him. Not once, not till the very end. He and I talked after we knew the cancer had moved to his brain. Nothing. Rock solid till the very end. But when it came to his family, it was different. So, what really kept Tim moving through the later things, as things progressed, kind of got worse, was Tim set up his bucket list. And we discussed that. And we had very direct conversations. And Tim set up the things he wanted to do. You guys went fishing this year. Weather wasn't the greatest, but he had a great time. Had some friends come in from out of town. And, Troy, your wedding, that was, his goal. Get me to that point. And it goes back to what was really important was the family. And he did. God blessed him to be able to make the wedding, and that was his goal. And he said, after that, he says, it's just bonus time from now. I've done what I really needed to do and what I wanted to do. From this point on, hey, it's okay. And, I through the whole time, I'm like, at some point he's going to crack, right? At some point, come on. No, never did. And the message, I guess I'll say the last thing I think that Tim wanted me to share was really just to kind of how important that was. And to both the boys, be happy. He was clear to you guys, he wants you to enjoy your life, whatever that is. And he knows you'll both be fine. For Sophie, it was, she'll be good. He wants you to be happy. And that was always Tim, right? Be happy. So, you've kind of heard a little bit of my stories and my experience with Tim. And I really feel blessed to be able to have the family think enough about myself to be able to share some of these stories with you guys. And once again, this is exactly what he would want. And for people to continue, the boards out there, if anybody's got pictures and stuff like that, share them with the family. But this would make him happy, and that's good. So with that, I'll get out from behind this mic. My wife's waving at me. She gave me a time limit. She's like, you start talking too long, you're out of there. So, but no, I will open things up. If there's anybody here that wants to come up and tell a Timism, if you will, one of Tim's stories, the family would love to hear it. Or pull them aside or give them a telephone call. As time goes on, that's one of the hardest things, I think, after we all lose a loved one, is 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, right? So as time goes on, you're thinking about them, you think Tim pops in your mind, don't be afraid to reach out to the family and just say, hey, thinking about you, how you doing? Because really the challenges will come in the coming weeks and the coming months. That's where they'll be. Because we're still kind of in the shock. Myself, I'm still in the shock. But when you have those thoughts, reach out. Or you find a picture, you think of a story, because like so many times, we kind of almost have two lives, right? We have that life that we live with our family and they all see it, but then like Tim's work life, we've traveled so much and spent tons of time in Mexico. A lot of things that the family doesn't know, that they would like to hear those stories. So if you think of that, I think that everybody would appreciate that very much. But if there's anybody that has the guts, come up here, want to say something, is not scared. Promise you, nobody will bite you. Might laugh at you. But if anybody wants to come up, please, now would be the time. Okay? Anybody? Takers?
Yeah, my brother was going to read some comments for Tim's sister.
Yep. Come on up. Great to meet you. Thank you.
So, Tim's brother-in-law, and yeah, he's glad that we're all here. And I have all kinds of things I could and like to say, but I told Tracy, Tim's sister, that I was going to read her words. These are her words, so I'll just go verbatim off of this. It says that I'm fourth in line of 5 kids and the only girl. Not mine, her words, okay? That was fun. No, really, it was interesting. As long as I can remember, Tim was the calm one, took things in stride, found the positive spin to everything. He always had some sort of interest in food, not just eating. He really liked preparing it. He liked to experiment. And Tim and I got to experiment a lot personally, but that's not her words, that's mine. There was also a matter of having to make his weight requirements for wrestling. Many days when I came home from school, he was watching some of the old shows while he devoured his belly buster hoagies. A 2-liter bottle of soda and a bag of chips he was dipping in a Miracle Whip jar laying on its side. Sometimes he was eating his unusual Campbell's bean and bacon, or his usual Campbell's bean and bacon soup. Mom was sure that food was just finding its way to his feet because he never seemed to gain any weight, yet you'd think he was trying to. Speaking of wrestling, some of you may not know he was an accomplished wrestler. Not sure why, but I really loved watching his matches. I can remember Mom screaming at the top of her lungs, surprised she never lost her voice. But I know she wanted to be sure he heard her. He was strong, but he had such an advantage with his long limbs. I know that because there were many times he would practice those moves on me. Not kidding. When I moved to Dallas and took over his apartment, the first thing he did was slap a map in my hands and told me to get lost. His theory was that I needed to get familiar with the area so I knew where the jobs were and that I was applying for. I have to say it was brilliant thinking. It turns out Dallas doesn't just grow big cowboys, they're smart too. They sure made it easy to navigate around. One day I dropped by his new apartment. Of course, I found him trying out his new smoker. Sausages, burgers, brisket, and chicken were smelling pretty good on his patio, which just happened to face the pool area. Imagine how good that smelled for everyone. He always seemed to have an interest in food. He liked eating it, but he also liked experimenting and then staring it. That one I missed. I don't know what that word was. Sharing it. Thank you. He struggled when he first moved to Dallas and realized that no one knew what a hoagie was. But more than that, he couldn't find the right ingredients for it. He was always thinking, and there always seemed to be a smirky smile on his face, like he was up to something. He could put an interesting spin on everything we talked about. He had me pondering other options I hadn't considered. When we were just friends, all of our friends seemed to like hanging out at our house. Dad always said it was like Grand Central Station. Mom and Dad loved our friends, calling them Mom and Dad. Tim's friends especially seemed to always be there. Love that. Dad had a '62 Chevy Impala. Many of us drove it. He liked to take the keys as punishment for various things, so we couldn't drive it. Tim thought that was comical since you didn't need a key to start it. He spent a lot of time figuring out the electronics in his cars and his friends' cars, and somehow made the lights on his car dance to the music on the radio. Mom got a kick out of that. But family was important to him. He always made time for visits with Mom's sisters, Aunt Jean, Aunt Marion. Aunt Marion always had one of his favorites made up for him, a gallon jar of cucumbers and onions. That sounds good. John and Emily and I made many stops in Michigan on our way back from our cabin, and we enjoyed each and every visit. Emily loved Tim and looked forward to every visit. There are so many wonderful memories that will live with me for a very long time. Camping trips, Potts Grove Pool Club, family pizza nights, New Year's Eve incident, don't ask, you know I'm going to ask. PA visits, his infectious laughter while recalling various stories, etc. I'm missing Tim already. He was just one of the pretty great brothers. And he really was, to me too. I know we weren't blood, but he was certainly a brother to me. Thanks.
All right, we'll see how this goes. For those of you that don't know, I am Tim's younger son, Drew. This has been a tough few weeks. I've never experienced anything quite like losing my dad. So at first, even though you know it's coming, I was angry. But I start to think more about it, and my perspective changes. I can say things about how unlucky I am to lose my dad at 28 years old, but instead I focus on the blessings, of which there are many. And the first of that is I spent 28 years of my life with the best dad that I could have asked for. I have 28 years of memories of family vacations and game nights and pool parties, sleepovers with friends, paintball, airsoft, tree forts, house projects. The list just goes on. All things that Dad was present for. Cracking jokes at me and Troy and all of our friends. Dad was heavily involved with our lives. As a sports coach, a scout leader, a handyman, a friend, and a father. I don't remember much about living in Texas. A few stories from Mom and Dad, but I do pretty much remember everything from when I moved to Michigan forward. And man, when we were kids, we had tree forts and bunkers all over the house in the backyard that Dad helped us build. Originally, we had the tree fort just for us to have fun as kids and whatever. And as we got older, we were like 11 or 12, I think. We started playing paintball and airsoft. So of course we made like a battleground. Dad helped with all of that stuff. He had so much fun building things and teaching me how to do that. Man, I wrote down a whole lot of stuff that is going to be way too much. Man, I could go on forever about all the memories. But I mean, the big thing that I guess that I want to say is just how much he cared about us and how much of a family man he was. I mean, as kids, Troy and I couldn't ask for more. We had a go-kart, I had a dirt bike, we had all the tree forts, we had a trampoline, we had the pool, we had tetherball, we had horseshoes, we had just anything that we wanted, pretty much we had. We went on camping trips, we went family vacations, we went and visited Mom's side of the family a lot. And even with all of his traveling with work, when we first moved to Michigan, he worked for Magellan. He was gone like 3 weeks at a time in China and Taiwan and stuff like that. But even with all that traveling, he was always there for all those trips. And he loved us and he loved doing that stuff. And on top of being a family man, he loved being a teacher. As Dave was kind of telling you guys, he loved helping people and teaching them and his Timisms and just sharing his knowledge. And he taught me a lot. All of the house projects growing up, most of you probably know, but they, Mom and Dad, totally rebuilt that house in Romeo. And I helped with a lot of those projects. And because of those projects, I know how to do plumbing and electrical and wall framing and roofing and whatever else. Just valuable skills that he loved to pass on and teach other people. And I'm so thankful for that. He taught me about work ethic and working hard and doing the right thing. And even when it looks like the people that are shady and that don't do the right thing get ahead, it doesn't matter because we do the right thing. And we work hard. And I'm so happy that he taught me that too. But I'm going to skip ahead to when we found out Dad had cancer. A huge blessing of it was that we had the knowledge that his time was getting short almost. It was over 2 years in advance. We had over 2 years to spend as much time together as we could, have as many family dinners and cookouts as we could, take family trips when Dad was able. In October of 2020, we took a family trip out to, Troy and Elena and I went out to Boston for a few days before Mom and Dad met us, and we drove to Portland, Maine from there. This was one of Dad's bucket list trips that Dave was telling you guys about on his bucket list, was going to Maine for some fresh lobster. So we did. We had lobster, shrimp, scallops, oysters, mussels, fish, every kind of seafood you could think, and it was all fresh and it was all delicious, and he was happy with every meal that we ate. And he was a big foodie. And I'm so happy that we were able to take that trip before he passed. In addition to that trip, I think the other big event before he passed was Troy's wedding. And that was his big goal to get to. And he made it. And we were all able to be there and just have that experience as a family before he left, and it was awesome. And then, before Thanksgiving, about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, he started taking a downturn. He was in the hospital for 13 days, and we found out the cancer spread to his brain. So, of course, it was causing issues and discomfort. And after the 13 days in the hospital, he came home the day before Thanksgiving. He was home for Thanksgiving, which he wanted to be. And then he decided he wasn't going to go back to the hospital. And he was going to live the rest of his days at home with the family. And I'm so happy that he made that decision, too. I can't imagine if he was stuck in the hospital with visiting restrictions or anything like that. All right. My dad was my best friend from the moment I was born to infinity and beyond, as he would say. I miss him like crazy. I miss his voice and his face. And walking into the house and hearing him call out, "Hey, bud." I miss him ask how work is going, or how me and Ashley are doing. I miss playing games and making jokes with him and watching TV. But he's not in vain anymore. He's in heaven for eternity. And I know he's seeing our good friend Leonard up there in heaven too. And I can't wait until I can see them both again. But until then, he's in my heart. And I talk to him every day. And I think to him every day. And rest in peace, Pop Z.
It's the first funeral I haven't cried at, and Drew's really jeopardizing that. And I thought you covered Timisms well. I didn't know there was a word for our entire childhood. But that really resonated with me. And I think, I don't know, it's tough, right? If you're prepared to speak at a funeral, like I don't envy that, How do you find something profound to say to all these people? But Drew and I, when we went and got dinner earlier this week, and we were talking about, okay, well, what are you going to say? What am I going to say? And we were guessing what Baxter was going to say and what Mom was going to say, and I thought that you'd hear a lot of different stories, and I don't think that you will. It sounds like you just get different perspectives on the same man. I'm probably not going to get through this, but a good friend of mine recently shared an old saying with me that funerals aren't for the dead, they're for the living, and that can be interpreted different ways. But seeing so many of you here today to support us and each other defines that clearly for me. So with that, I just wanted to start by saying thank you all for being here. And Dad always loved having our friends over at the house growing up. And it was important to him to have a home where we wanted to be and where our friends felt welcome. And so I know that he would have been thrilled to see all of you here today. But to me, and to a lot of our friends growing up, Dad was a coach and a mentor. Dad loved to share his experiences and his wisdom, his Timisms, right? And as I reflected on a lot of those conversations with my dad, I found that at the core of most of his messages was do the right thing. So, as Drew was kind of getting into, and he fully expected you to follow that guiding principle. He was very big on moral character, and so I've got one story to expound on that. And he used to coach one of my travel teams growing up. And so one game, I was playing center field, and we're just getting pounded by the other team, headed straight to a mercy. And so as the composed, mature young man that I was getting all steamed up and blaming everybody else, telling myself how trash my teammates were. And so someone comes up to the plate, and the other team, they just crank another ball out into right field, and it goes past our guy, and I throw my glove as far as I can. And before I can even get to my glove, Dad comes out of the dugout, calls timeout, and I look up, and he's just staring at me. And he just points to me, points back to the dugout, back to the bench, and I'm like, shit, you know. So as soon as we made eye contact, you know, I go, I head back into the dugout, and he made me sit in the car. He made me walk to the parking lot and sit in the car the rest of the game. It's like the fourth inning. And the thing, you know, that really kind of drove home and why I think this is a good story is that on that ride home, he didn't tell me how childish I was being or stupid or anything like that. You know, he spent the entire ride telling me, lecturing me on what it meant to be a leader and how my actions reflected on my teammates. And I think that kind of correlates to a lot of stories that you heard today. You know, that's who he was. You know, he was a mentor, he was a leader. And I think Dad had this great ability to evaluate people's potential. And for some reason, he felt obligated to do everything he could to push you to find that potential. Sports, school, career, our choices and girlfriends. If Dad had an opinion, you were going to hear it. And you took that advice and you applied it, or you didn't. But I'm certain that I am who I am today because of him. It's like that Progressive commercial. We can't help you from becoming your parents. But maybe that's not always a bad thing. So I want to leave you with some perspective from the past couple of years, and I hope you take these thoughts into consideration. After high school, I moved to the west side of the state for college, and I think, like many people, I just had this newfound independence. And although I was still close with my family, I really only came home for the holidays and summer break. And then just for holidays, and then just for big holidays. And then I moved to Chicago, and a lot of time passed, and I knew less and less about what my family was up to and how their lives were going. Then about 5 years ago, I moved back to this area, but even the close proximity didn't really motivate me to reconnect with my family in a purposeful way. But then Dad was diagnosed with cancer, and I was reminded of our mortality. And although cancer is a terrible curse, I see the last 2 years after he found out to be a godsend. For me, at least. I see it as life's way of kicking me in the ass and saying, you better figure this shit out while you still have time. And the cool thing about being an adult is that you really don't need your parents as mentors so much anymore. And you can really just be friends with your parents. So I was blessed to walk away from this experience having become close friends with my dad. We got to travel, check a lot of things off his list, see places none of us had seen, do things none of us had done before. We got to laugh and share stories, and we were able to share several beers. And most importantly to me, Dad was at my wedding. I knew this part was going to get me. And he loved my wife as if she were his own daughter. I'm so thankful to have that for the rest of my life. So my message to you is one you've heard before. Don't wait to tell the people around you that you love them. Don't wait to go do those things that you want to do and see those places you want to see. Because only a select few of us are lucky enough to know how much time we have left. I love you all.
Well, unlike Dave, I did bring my written stuff, and I'm going to read it. I think that's best for me. But first, I want to thank everybody for being here today to help us celebrate Tim's life. And for everybody who prayed us through the last 2 years, thank you for all those prayers. And I've had a little time to think about what I'd like to share, and I realized that I can share. Tim broke his life into chapters, and I can share a chapter. There were 30 years before me, and I know 30 is the number because on our first date, as we got into sharing about ourselves with each other, He told me he always felt like he wouldn't live past the age of 30. So naturally I asked him, how old are you? And he said, oh, I'll be 30 in a couple of weeks. I was like, okay, but we had another 35 years. Tim was a saver. He liked to keep trinkets and bits and pieces of things, and they all held a memory for him. And when the trinkets started filling up boxes, I asked him if he could minimize some of the stuff. So he went through the boxes and he held up little things and he told me the story behind everything, put it all back in and said, I can't get rid of anything. So we still have those boxes of stuff today, but among the things he kept, I came across a letter I had written to him right after we got engaged. And in the letter, I detail his character and his humor and heart that I observed in watching his fellowship and relationship with others. And these were the reasons I fell in love with him. And in reading all the messages since he's passed that everybody has left, in stories that people have shared, he was that same person at work and as a friend. It's obvious. So as a young couple, being in love and loved by Tim was a lot of fun, and then it became a mutual walk when we had our family, as we believed in the same values in raising our sons. And we had a dream, like most others, of a retired season of life, and ours was a log cabin by a lake. However, health issues changed things for Tim, and they changed things for us. And I ended that same letter with the words, I pray God's blessing on our life together, because in my heart, I believe more than anything else that God is real. And as long as we believe together, we're going to love together. And I had forgotten about that letter, and I'm glad he was a saver. And I've heard many times in my life this statement, it's not about you, it's not about me, look at the big picture. And so the question is, how broad is your big picture? Is it the scope of the job? Is it the edges of your extended family, the country, the world? In the last year of Tim's life, the big picture became eternity. And we refocused, and God granted us some extended time to believe together and love together, as I had written to him 35 years before. We were gifted with 2 wonderful sons and a beautiful daughter-in-law. Together with us, we determined to make whatever time Tim had left on earth as a time to mend and heal and grow in our relationship as a family. And you've heard some of those stories, and it was such a gift. God granted us another full year to work on the bucket list and all the things that the boys have passed on. There's no way to celebrate all the lovely things about a person in a few paragraphs, and thankfully you've each experienced Tim and the Timisms, the stories that are shared. The retired season of life in a log cabin by the lake, poor health changed that. And Tim struggled with many health issues. The greatest challenge was losing the majority of use of his legs. And he wasn't a whiner. He never, why me? It isn't fair. It wasn't Tim. But it did take its toll on him. And it became obvious at some point we weren't going to get our dream by the lake. However, what God gave us instead was his presence in walking through our journey of the last 2 years of life with cancer. And there are gifts of the heart and gifts of the soul that I would never trade for tangible things. This past Tuesday, I received a card from a friend who lost his beloved wife 17 years ago. And he included a poem in his card that he knew would be healing that I'd like to share with you. And it's titled, Miss Me, But Let Me Go. When I come to the end of the road and the sun has set for me, I want no rights in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not too long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that we shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all a part of the Master's plan. I'm set on the road home. And when you're lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends we know. Bury your sorrows in good deeds. Miss me, but let me go. I have been spending the time since Tim passed just thanking God for the gift of Tim. for the joy and the deep love that Tim brought into my life. But heaven is the big picture. And Tim's in heaven. And I know that. I'm positive of that. He's no longer struggling with his broken body, and his pain is gone. And he's experiencing joy beyond our finite imagination. And that is what I'm celebrating. I'll see him again.
Sophie's brother's going to come up and. Pardon me? Sophie's brother. Your brother come up and end us in prayer. Thank you.
Let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we're gathered here to celebrate Tim's life and our love for Tim. We grieve because he's no longer with us, and we truly, truly miss him. But we're grateful for Tim's life and Tim's love that we shared as a husband, as a dad, a brother, a son, an uncle, and a friend. Lord, we celebrate today that Tim is in your presence in heaven, no longer suffering from the sickness and pain that he endured with such dignity and courage the last several years of his life. Today we are truly blessed how Tim touched all of our lives with a special love, and we'll always cherish all those great memories and special times that we shared with him. And Lord, we thank you for the wonderful gift of eternal life. And one day we'll all reunite with Tim in your kingdom. In closing, I pray that all these special words, memories, experiences shared here today will serve as comfort and encouragement to each and every one of us. In Jesus' name, amen.
So folks, this concludes today. The family will be up here in the front if anybody would like to come up and share some stories, say the goodbyes. And just, they want to thank everybody for being here. Thank you for all your support, and just really happy that everyone was able to share Tim's life, share this today, and thank everybody. So thank you very much.